If your business runs on 5 different apps, 12 browser tabs, and one spreadsheet that everyone's afraid to touch, it's probably time for Odoo. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that connects every part of your business into one powerful, easy-to-use platform. So instead of wasting time switching between disconnected systems, your entire business works together in real time. Your team moves faster, your data stays accurate, and you can actually focus on growing your business. Let one unified system run your entire business. From the first opportunity to the final payment, everything works together in one place. Whether you're a small business or managing a large operation, Odoo gives you the flexible platform built to grow with you. Try it today for free at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Welcome back to the Center in the City podcast, a space to pause, breathe, and come back to yourself, even in the middle of a full and busy life. I'm your host, Wade Brill, and in each episode, we explore mindfulness for real life, simple practices, reflections, tools to help you feel grounded, present, and connected to what matters most to you. So let's settle in and let's get centered. Welcome back to the Center in the City podcast. I'm your host, Wade Brill, and I am so glad you are here. Today's episode is an amazing opportunity to slow down and gain awareness about your relationship to technology. Jay Vidyarthi, who is an award-winning author of Reclaim Your Mind, 7 Strategies to Enjoy Tech Mindfully, joins us. A little bit more about Jay. He is an accomplished designer, entrepreneur, thought leader in this really unique intersection between mindfulness and technology. He's the founder of Still Ape, has been involved in many other technologies that have helped millions of people improve their well-being. His work has been featured at Harvard, MIT, TED, Forbes, CNN, so many other companies and publications. He also has a background as a meditation teacher and practitioner. So I wanted to have Jay on the podcast to give us his insights and share his wisdom of how can we enjoy tech in a mindful way, in a way where we're taking out the shame, we're taking out the guilt, we're taking out the internal pressure that we put on ourselves to create this perfect relationship with technology in a way where it feels like very complicated and layered. You're going to leave this episode with so many nuggets of wisdom and insights of how you can be more intentional, be more conscious of your relationship with technology. What do you want to shift? What do you want to keep? What can you remove? A lot of the extra pressure or guilt or tension that comes up when we think about our relationship with technology. I personally learned so much, and Jay even gave me some insights on how I can more skillfully use those moments where I get wrapped up in scrolling when I'm sitting on my meditation cushion about to meditate, how I can use that to actually enhance my practice instead of detract it. So you can learn more about Jay and check out all of his links linked in the show notes. And wherever you are listening to this podcast, maybe while on a walk, commuting, cooking in the kitchen, I welcome you to settle in and let's get centered. Jay, welcome to the Center in the City podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I'd love to kick us off by having you share with us what is your favorite practice that supports you staying centered, whatever that means to you?
I think I have 2. It depends on what's going on in my life, because to me, practice is in the context of life. So when life is crazy and busy and all over the place, I love effortless practices like do nothing or sometimes I like to refer to it as stop trying. Just sit there and stop trying for a few minutes. But then when I have the energy, there's a formulation of Mahasi style noting practice from one of my favorite teachers, Shinzen Young, called See, Hear, Feel, where you progressively note all of your sense experience in those three categories. And it's just been an absolute game changer for me.
Okay, for those of us that are listening, they're like, how do you not do anything? What is that practice like for you? Like, walk us through that because, and I know you talk a little bit about this in your book, and we'll get to that in a second, but that idea of doing nothing in this modern day world, I think is so foreign and so scary for a lot of us. And even that word, like nothing, can feel so spacious that it's kind of like falling subliminal space. So where in the doing nothing, like walk us through that process and where you can find some sort of ground in that doing nothing.
I think the reason it feels intimidating and scary, yet also mysteriously attractive, is because I think it's really easy to misconceive what we mean by do nothing, which actually speaks to why I like to think about it in terms of stopping trying. Because when we think about do nothing, we think about emptiness. Like we're imagining sitting there, there's not a thought, there's not nothing you're doing, you're being completely still. But that's in fact not what we mean. What we mean is letting go of any attempt to change anything about what's happening. And like I can invite us to do it right now, right? There's nothing to fix. There's nothing to change about your experience. And so if you're thinking, the invitation would not be to try to force yourself to stop thinking, would be to just let yourself think, because that's what's happening. You're not trying to think, but you're not trying to not think either. And this is why I find it to be very radical and like subversive in the modern world that we live in, with all this information flying at us, with everything trying to pull us in one direction or another. There's an almost go with the flow nature to it. So the invitation would be to sit there, find a cozy spot, and let everything be okay exactly as it is for those moments, as opposed to trying to aspire to some, you know, idea of nothingness that isn't actually what we're shooting for. Just stop trying.
Mm. And in that practice, is your mind doing more of like an open awareness practice, or would you say that's even doing something?
So that it's an interesting question actually, because I have done a lot of meditation in my life. And so sometimes I do find myself habitually slip into certain techniques. Like I might habitually take a deep breath or pay attention to my breathing or even note, see, hear, feel. But there's a subtle difference between me like putting some effort into trying to I'm going to pay attention to my breath versus like it's just kind of happening. So I'm certainly not trying to practice open awareness, but sometimes I'm openly aware. But sometimes I'm just sitting there and I'm thinking about work. And that's also where the nuance is, like I'm not going to try to stop myself from doing that either. I'm going to give myself some freedom to not pressure myself into doing any which way.
I love that invitation. And you definitely talk about that a lot in your book about releasing the pressure, like the pressure, the guilt, the shame that comes with our relationship to our mind, our attention, our habits. I feel like a lot of us struggle, and I'm putting myself in that camp too, in this modern day world of when we are, let's say, waiting for the bus or waiting for the train, in these moments where there's an opportunity to do nothing, when there's a moment for us to just be in the present moment, we grab our phones. We grab our phones to scroll or to text or to start to write that email or to multitask or maybe to listen to a podcast or put on some music. And like we start to fill this constant space in our time and days with more like noise and distractions and also information and stimulation and, you know, all the goodness. And I'm curious, like, how would you say, if we just even were to break this down, how would you describe your relationship to technology? Like, as if it were a, you know, old school Facebook status.
Technology is my friend.
Okay, so technology is your friend. So, in those moments of technology being your friend, how do you strike a balance with it of being a connected friend, a friend that's like present, a friend that's checking with it, and also a friend that is like independent and like not, has some space from their friendship?
Well, when you think about friendship and you think about the different types of relationships we have with each other, and you apply that to technology, which is not a crazy thing to do, by the way. I mean, the research is clear that the way we interact with technology is almost social. Because if you think about it, our ancestors, we evolved to relate to anything interactive as a social being, whether that's each other or animals. And we relate to inanimate objects as objects. But there's a new category of object that we've created, which is the interactive object. And so our evolutionary system is kind of social. And you can categorize your human relationships, right? You have some loving relationships, you have some friendships, you have some challenging relationships, you have codependent relationships. Unfortunately, some of us have toxic relationships. This is all possible with technology. And for me personally, when I look at the role technology plays in my life, and a lot of the people I work with, so I assume a lot of your listeners as well, if you really look closely at your relationship with technology, it doesn't quite right to paint it with the toxic brush because there's so much positive, there's so much joy, there's so much meaning, connection, and purpose. So when you think about a human relationship that you might have where there's a ton of joy, meaning, connection, and purpose, but then also these problematic elements, you start to get an idea of maybe a better way to interact with technology is to think about it as a relationship and to try to find a secure relationship, to try to find a healthy relationship, to set effective boundaries. But the boundaries are not needlessly creating distance. In fact, the boundaries are designed to bring you closer to the joy, the meaning, and the purpose without the traps that is sometimes offered by the illusions that are put forward by this technology. So if we go back to your example of waiting for the bus, the question I have is like, is that a problem? Is it a problem to be looking at your phone while you're waiting for the bus? I think it depends on the individual.
Yeah, and I love how you really highlight that in the book of like all of, it's not helpful for us to be painting these broad strokes of what a healthy relationship should look like with technology that's so individualistic based on your own relationships to it and the specific relationships to different tech or different apps. And one of the things that you write in your book, I'm reading a quote. You say, a mindful relationship with technology is all about learning how to find balance between resisting and completely immersing yourself in digital life. And I love that because I love the word balance. It's the essence of like centered in the city. It is, and I know a lot of people listening to this or a lot of people just out there are like, fuck balance. Like what the balance doesn't exist in this world. But I really think this idea of how do we discern for ourselves? When are we completely immersed? And when are we feeling present in our modern day life? Because I know as a human, as I'm navigating this world, I'm walking down the street or I'm in the train and I'm seeing everybody's head down at their screens, sometimes including me and sometimes not. But it kind of like breaks my heart. I feel this, whoa, what reality are we all in? Everybody's in their own siloed world. How are we connected and like present with each other as we're navigating this thing called life, as we're swimming through the city, communing and we're all in our different worlds. It feels very disconnecting to me. And that is counter to like my values of connection. And so I'm curious, like when you think about this quote about a mindful relationship with technology is learning how to find the balance between resisting and completely immersing yourself in digital life, like how do you find your own balance?
It starts with self-awareness. I think it's easy to find a lot of tips and tricks about what you should do, right? Disable your notifications, get the phone out of the bedroom. I don't know, set the screen to black and white for some reason. I don't even really know why. Apparently, the red is so powerful that we can't resist red notifications. Like, I get the perception of that, but it's not realistic to me. What's realistic is to coach people, as I do, to take a very close look at the technologies you choose to include in your life, not with the sense of fear mongering and guilt and shame. And yes, tech companies need to be more ethical, regulators need to consider, scientists need to investigate. I'm not saying we absolutely need all of that, but in the practical, mundane moments of your daily life, it does not take a long time for any individual to bring a little bit of awareness to make some clear decisions, kind of in a sober, calm day where you can stay true to your intentions. It's not like you're overwhelmed and underslept, like on a good day, to take a step back and say, which of these technologies do I choose to include in my life? Which are giving me steps to take closer to my deepest intentions? And which ones are trapping me in illusions? And if you look at that carefully, what you'll very quickly see is not only are there technologies that give us a lot of positive things and we want to include in our lives, the illusions we get stuck on, we're usually getting stuck on them because of an underlying healthy emotional need that's being stuck on the illusion. So even if you find, oh, I'm like stuck on video games or social media or work email, or I'm chatting with my AI constantly, whatever it might be, the minute you start to feel guilty or ashamed about that or judge other people walking down the street, you can zoom out and say, what am I looking for? I'm actually looking for play. I'm looking for connection. I'm looking to satisfy my need to provide for my family by checking work email. These are healthy needs. And then we can think very objectively, okay, well, work email is a necessity, but maybe I don't need it on my phone because the entire thing I'm trying to do is provide for my family, yet I can't pay attention when I'm playing with my kids because work email is on my phone. So I'm caught up in an illusion where the need is healthy. And if you listen to the move that we just made, it's a move towards self-compassion. It's not berating yourself for checking your work email when your kid is around. It's like both checking the email and playing with a kid are fundamentally because you love your kid, and that is to be celebrated. And it's just about changing strategies and skills. And then the second thing you'll notice in that move is the solution or the direction or the intention for different people will be completely different because the person standing right next to you might be fine with email on their phone. They might not be stuck on work email. Meanwhile, maybe they're stuck on TikTok and they have their own healthy emotional need to work with. And so the idea that there's a one size fits all for these tips and tricks is completely out the window.
I appreciate you highlighting those different lenses that we can start to look through our habits and our needs through, and slowing down to just heighten our level of awareness. And you're right, like I have a deep need for connection. And so when I am seeing us all disconnected, or maybe even feeling myself disconnected from the technology, it's like, ooh, and then I notice maybe more judgment gets thrown out than curiosity of like, what needs are people trying to serve for themselves by putting their heads down and scrolling, listening, whatever they're choosing to do with technology. I'm curious, when we think about this habit and need cycle we can get into, I think a big sticking point for a lot of people is either the nighttime, like putting their phone away, putting their phone to bed. They end up staying up, if it's scrolling a social media app or digging into the web, whatever, online shopping, whatever it might be, like tends to happen at night before people go to bed, or in the morning, grabbing their phone and scrolling tends to be the first thing that they do. And those, I hear within my clients, are like the stickier parts of technology. And then what happens is they get mad at themselves, to your point about offering self-compassion, but they get mad at themselves thinking, oh my God, I just stayed up an hour later and now I'm too tired to wake up and meditate or go to the gym or the things that I said I was wanting to do. So then it kind of turns our relationship into technology as like this toxic, more addiction than like a helpful friend. Any pointers or strategies or things that people can think about of why they pick up the phone or why they can't let the phone go in those moments?
Yes. So not only do we have these healthy emotional needs, but they are getting trapped by illusions. So when you see those people walking on the street, you can have the compassion for the healthy emotional needs, but also the recognition that we're all getting trapped by algorithms that are serving up illusions of connection or a kind of watered down version of play, which is like what I would describe video games. I love video games. They're fun. But when I watch my kid play on the playground, there's a whole other thing going on that I would describe as a healthy play, like setting rules and imagination, which doesn't happen that easily in an online video game, not to mention shared embodiment. So I'm with you. And so for adults, when you think about the sleep and the morning routines, this is where we have to tease those elements apart. Yes, there is a healthy emotional need for connection and stimulation and engagement that is getting caught on these illusions when I'm really tired or when the day hasn't started yet. Yet, in your share, you were describing something that many people report to me as well. There's a clarity to be celebrated. Oh, I see very clearly that this extra hour of technology is messing with me. Okay. Now, this is where the practice is essential because what do we do with that clarity? If we turn to guilt, shame, self-criticism, and self-judgment, and we fall down that spiral, one thing I can tell you for sure is that's not going to lead us to a healthier habit. That's going to lead us deeper into the spiral. So, it's one thing to use the phone an hour or two late at bedtime. It's another thing to beat yourself up about it. And I think that's usually what I think is the first step for people who have a share like that. Before you even think about changing that habit, you need to untangle the self-criticism and the guilt and the shame. You need to see yourself as saying, listen, I'm in a busy time of life. I've had a long, exhausting day. Maybe I didn't have all the control and agency that I want in this phase of life. Some things went hard. I unwound at the end of the day with an extra hour of Reels or TikTok or whatever. Okay. Not the ideal solution, not living to my deeper intentions, maybe, but I'm also not a bad person. I actually don't like language of addiction. I think that's shame-inducing language. I would also group the term binge watching, which is like a term that's borrowed from eating disorders. Like there's a lot of really subtle nested guilt and shame, even to the point that like sometimes you'll hear people say something like, oh, we're on our phones too much, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. But you can kind of hear that they think it's a bad thing, even if they know that they're supposed to say it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because it's really layers. And so I think the spiritual practice here is to say, like, can I really truly feel that self-compassion for myself about why I'm reaching for this technology? And what I think is the kind of light at the end of the tunnel, to sort of the carrot to dangle here, which is once you untangle all the negativity around it, and once you bring even more clarity to seeing what that underlying healthy emotional need is, very quickly the strategy moves away from I need to will myself to put my phone away. It becomes a completely different strategy, which is, oh, I'm using my phone to seek connection and I'm getting stuck on illusions. So what I need to do is find more lasting, fulfilling paths to connection in my life. And then miraculously, my phone use will become more balanced.
Yeah, God, getting to our core needs is life-changing when we can slow it down and get curious enough with ourselves. Like even last night, I was like, oh, I'm needing some comfort. And there was part of me that wanted to watch a show. And then I asked myself, like, okay, I can do that. And is there a different or maybe healthier strategy that would feel better right now? And not shaming myself for wanting to watch a show was really helpful. Like having some curiosity to also be like, okay, is there kind of like, okay, you want to eat something right now. Do you want that donut or do you want to choose an orange? Again, both aren't bad, but one might be a healthier option right now. So thinking about even that kind of choice point of how we can support ourselves in giving us what we need. And one of the things I hear, because I coach my clients around slowing down to get curious with their needs, is even like that can sometimes be the hardest part of what do I need? And so I'm curious, as people are building these relationships with themselves of growing more awareness, do you feel like having a meditation practice is necessary in order to build more of that awareness?
To me, it's the awareness that's necessary, and meditation is only one route to get there. If I'm working with someone and they have a strong meditation practice, I also am deeply into meditation and will take that language. But my basic first step for people is actually just keeping a journal of the before, during, after of their interactions with technology. Depending on the scope, it'll be for a day or for a week. And even that is an incredibly transformative moment for a number of people because there just never was the idea to bring direct awareness to our interactions with technology. And people tend to have a lot of insight just arise organically. I think one of the reasons for this is there's a lot of fear mongering around technology. There's a lot of guilt and shame. There's a lot of higher powers we can point to. And, one of my meditation teachers, Soryu Foral, said this thing once that I never forgot, which was that the victim mentality is one of the most seductive things to the human mind because it completely absolves our need for accountability. Like the minute that we can blame others, we don't have to do anything now. We are just victims. And we see this in every category of life. And while it is true, as I said, tech companies need to be more ethical, especially in this age of AI. We need to think about regulation. We need to think about science. I also would caution individuals to avoid this victim mentality, like I am just a lemming being blown around by these large corporate and societal entities, when in fact, that is true for some issues. But for this particular issue, it's showing up in the mundane moments of your everyday life and these choices that you make with technology. And it's actually surprising how much better choices we can make with just a little bit of awareness. So whether it's journaling, whether it's going for a run, whether it's just contemplating your relationship with technology, that's sort of up to the individual. But I will say, for me, the path has been meditation. I've gone through many different traditions. And so I can recommend that path with my whole heart. And that's why I teach meditation and why I'm a big advocate for mindfulness in particular as a way to heal our relationship with technology in the attention economy and especially in the age of AI.
When I sit in my morning meditation practice, sometimes I notice I will have my phone near me and I will sit and like 10 minutes go by. I'm like, shit, I just was scrolling instead of practicing. Like I'm on my cushion, ready to meditate, and here I am. And I have to like see myself doing this habit and being like, okay, you just did that. Now there's a choice point. Like I'm out of the like zoomed in moment, see myself kind of like this bird's eye view. And I'm like, okay, there's a choice point. You can keep scrolling, or do you actually want to sit and practice? And I have to be like, okay, this is my personal responsibility here. To your point of like, I don't have to just be a victim to the scroll and the algorithm, and how I can reclaim my own attention in that moment. And it's like, okay, that my mind wandered off for 10 minutes, but it's now like, okay, but now what? In this moment, what's my choice? Like, am I going to keep feeding that loop, or am I going to choose to put my phone down and actually sit and practice? So I've noticed that loop happen many of times to the point where I've now tried to make sure my phone is not even in the room when I'm meditating, to create different strategies. Yeah.
You know what might be a fun experiment for
Please.
you? Okay, so here's a practice I did for a while, and I'll offer it as you don't have to do it if it seems too challenging, but I would encourage you to try like a 10-minute practice of using your phone to spread kindness and love and compassion. So take 10 minutes on your cushion, in posture, light the candle, pull up your phone, jump on Instagram or TikTok or wherever you like to hang out. And for 10 minutes, any post you see, any representation of another human, see if you can send them some kindness and love. I've done this a number of times, and some examples of things that have come up is like, I found this strange inversion, like a lot more attention going to posts that have no hearts or comments, and being the person to leave the heart and to leave a in-depth comment. Like, I would constantly have this experience of seeing a real human being out there, maybe face to camera, sharing a heartfelt message that I thought was beautiful. And there's no hearts and there's no comments, and it's been up for weeks. And we all know what that feels like. And to just jump in that comment thread and write like a mini essay. Like, I love this post and thank you for sharing it. And just like, what an incredible feeling it was to share that and to know that not only will it be well received, but it'll be received kind of in a wound, in the kind of wounds that this attention economy creates for all of us. Another thing that has arisen in this is, you know, online forums tend to be a source of disagreement. And I found myself like making posts that were agreeing with people and that being kind of strange. Like, oh my gosh, like this whole thing is designed for us to disagree. And so when I jump on and I say, actually, I think this is a really good point. Thank you for sharing it. So, but the reason I offer it, of course, is to show that it's not either or. It's not I'm sitting in meditation or I'm on my phone and I have to put the phone away to be mindful. I think this is the polarization and the dichotomy that's making it really hard for people to practice and putting their meditation practice into a mode of kind of like escapism from the modern world, when in fact, healthy relationships have boundaries, but there are also forums for us to interact in a healthy and a secure way. And that's something to explore.
I love that invitation, and I will definitely take that on. And I think what I see when I'm using my phone, it is, I'm sure you've heard that phrase before of, am I creating or am I consuming? And I really have tried to make sure in the morning that I'm creating before consuming. And so I love that even if I am consuming, that the invitation I'm hearing that is to like create loving kindness, like to be a creator in that moment while I'm consuming. And so it's not the either or dichotomy, that black and white thinking we can get trapped into. So I love that invitation. I also notice, though, the power that I feel when I can claim my own attention first in the morning, especially instead of letting it go out into the ethos, because that can really spike my personal anxiety in a sense of feeling not grounded and feeling more clouded, feeling more scattered in my thinking, detached from my own voice. And so my morning practice is really helpful for me, of a place of like, I'm coming home to myself, I'm gathering myself, I'm noticing what's here so that I can then feel like I'm entering the world a little bit more collected, more centered, so to say, to be a participant.
Yeah, that's, it's about the habits that we form and the way these things engage with us. And all I would say is that you're showing that awareness of what you need. And that is very true of silent practice for many people. Yet at the same time, it can lead us to these sort of oppositional stances with the world, right? Retreat is this escape, but I don't necessarily think that's the real purpose of retreat. I think it's more of an advance. It's an advance. When my wife and I, at one point, we kind of abandoned our modern lives and we went and we were in a monastery for, I think, 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks or something, doing intensive practice. And one of the things that came up for me was that when I chose to do this, a lot of the people in my life, colleagues, family, etc., they sort of approached it like, you're escaping from something, you want less, you want to get rid of all this stuff and go less. And while I was on that mountain, I was sort of like, that's actually not at all what I'm doing here. I actually want more. I'm here because, to me, the sense of meaning and purpose and awareness that has come from these practices is so much deeper than the frivolous things that are tempting me in modern society. And I was like, I need to go deeper into purpose. And so to me, that daily practice, if you need those 10 minutes, you need 30 minutes, you need 60 minutes, you need to go away for 2 months, whatever it might be, we all have that innate wisdom to identify our needs, our deepest needs. And ultimately, that's what kind of become the red thread of our whole conversation, which is to see those deeper needs and to meet them square on. And sometimes those needs are 10 minutes of silence. But my question would be, when you're sitting there and instead of doing the 10 minutes, you're accidentally pulling up your phone, there's an emotional need under there, right? And in some cases, you might just be getting trapped and you really need to set a boundary, or what I like to say is a ritual of putting the phone away so you can focus on practice. But the reason I invited you the way I did is that there's also something that's calling you to the phone. Maybe you needed some stimulation or some connection. Because I know sometimes when I'm practicing in the morning, I feel very lonely. And one of my teachers once said, one of the big challenges when you have a challenge with meditation, 90% of the time, the challenge is you're trying to do it alone. And that can be really tricky. And so being able to practice with others in this way, even if it's just a piece of it. Another example is I have a friend across the pond who's suffering from a very challenging illness. We haven't seen each other in years, but sometimes we will text message a link to a guided meditation. We won't be on a call or anything. We'll just both do it at the same time. And then we'll message at the end and say, thanks for the practice. And it's like all I saw was a line of text on there, but there was that feeling of connection of not doing it alone. So all in all, it's just with self-awareness, we can navigate these choices, whether that's how we meditate, how we use our phones, how we practice, which apps we allow on which devices, whether we watch TV, how much TV we watch. But the one choice that I would advocate, drop the guilt, drop the shame, drop the self-criticism, drop the judgment of others, especially different generations. Gen Z are okay. You know what I mean? And also the boomers who don't know technology, they're okay too. We all have different relationships with technology because of what we grew up with. And it's just, we could just use a huge reduction in all the judgment and criticism.
Could we imagine a world where we're all judging each other less and judging ourselves less, right? What a world that could be. When you've come off retreats, whether it was this 6-week retreat or maybe shorter retreats, what have you found is your, like, maybe been a new relationship to technology? Or were you like, oh my God, I miss you, old friend? Or were you excited? Or what were some of those past moments that stood out to you that gave you some insight?
Yeah, there's sort of two things come to mind. One is on retreat, I usually lock my technology away and I find my habits decay in an interesting way. Like day one, I'm still like reaching in my pocket, being like, oh, where's my phone? Oh yeah, I put it in the safe, And then as that sort of decays, when I come back, like I have some very clear memories of sort of inspecting my phone like it's like this alien object, which is now something I often teach in the context of meditation, which is to just inspect this device and to see the colors and the movement and the shapes and not immediately connect to the meaning of the language and the applications, but just like, what a bizarre, fascinating, interesting device. And I think that's largely informed the healthy distance I'm able to maintain with my technology. And then the other thing is, as you said, I feel like I come back from retreat with a lot of clarity on which technology that I really want to be using and which ones I don't want to be using. And so for me, that's a huge part of it, which is to just see, okay, I come back and there's a certain video game I just never want to touch again. But then there's another game where I'm like, actually, that looks really fun. And I think it'll be really satisfying. And I bring full clarity and awareness to it. And I have a lot of enjoyment. I think the way I can couch this is that, in the Tibetan and other Vajrayana Buddhist practices, there's a lot of emphasis on joy. And so that becomes really heightened in my experience of technology post-retreat. I'm like, oh, actually, there's a lot of joy here. There's like, if you go on TikTok, like it's so easy for you and I on a podcast like this to spend, half an hour shitting on TikTok. Oh, it's poisoning our brains. But like, if you go meditate for 10 minutes to calm yourself down, you pull up TikTok and you take your time, you will find joy. You will find an absolute ton of joy. You'll find comedians and people dancing and hilarious skits. And so the question is, both on the individual level, but also I think we could get systemic about design ethics here. How do we get the positive things of technology without getting trapped by the negative things? And then for the organizations, how do we design our technology to like let go of these incentive structures that are taking us down the path to like all the negative patterning of the capitalist economy and driving attention harvesting and attachment to actually a technology that lines up with a different value system, something that values joy and awareness and true connection. And that's like the work that we need to do over the next decades. And I think this conversation is a small part of it, but we need a societal movement. And it's almost an activist movement, in my opinion.
Okay, so speaking of this, because I found out about you and your work when listening to you talk about the future of AI and mindfulness. And I'm curious, what do you feel is our human relationship to AI and this like balance of how can we use AI responsibly without letting it completely outsource like our thinking and our creativity and our decision making, because I can see how easily that is happening in personal and professional world.
Yeah, I think the advent of AI has made these topics even more pressing than they already were. Question is whether we can learn our lessons from the last generation of technology and apply them to this technology. We can't even talk about our individual relationships with AI without the foundational note of potential environmental impacts, the effects on the job market, inequality, and then also what I would say is like information inequality, like those who have access to these tools have access to intense intelligence that generates even more inequality. So there's that layer, which I think some people are rightfully choosing to boycott AI as a result of. That's not my personal stance. I think that those are the products of a larger system of inequality and incentive structures that are broken. And I'm always trying to wonder what the most effective action could be. So I'm trying to think about how to engage with AI. That being said, for individuals, I think it's really important that we understand clearly what AI is. I think that's the highest leverage point at this point, is informing people about what AI and what it isn't, because there's all this conversation about general intelligence or is AI conscious. That's very confused, in my opinion. Ultimately, AI is trained on all of our data. So it's like looking in a mirror and being like, I think the person in there is conscious. It's like, no, it's reflecting us. That being said, there are philosophical questions that are unclear, which is whether a information network like AI can be considered like in a sort of panpsychist way, conscious in some way. So big philosophical questions abound. Now getting to the practical, I think when an everyday person interacts with AI, they should understand that it's trained on certain data, that that data has a bias, but also that data is incomplete to what we're able to experience. That has no first person data on anything we experience, like awareness or friendship or kindness or love. It only has second and third hand reports, that being said, conceptual from the internet. So it's an extension of our intelligence, but not our innate wisdom. On top of that, there's a layer of training in AI, which is designed to make it more profitable, therefore give you what you want to hear, not necessarily what you need to hear, which is where you get the sycophantic element of AI, where it's always like, great question, Wade. I don't think anyone has ever asked that question before. Anyway, let's break it down. Here's three ways, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's just the way it talks to you is not real. And so, like we were talking about in the other examples, it's serving up an illusion that can be easily ignored by some, but might actually meet unmet emotional needs for others and become problematic. And so I think the important thing right now is to see it clearly for what it is and what it's not. And that will empower you to, like you were starting to point out, use it in effective ways where it can be of benefit without letting it cannibalize the things that are important about being a happy and well-adjusted human being. Writing would be a good example, where it's like you can use it to organize your thoughts and to maybe come up with an outline. And if you're writing a technical document, maybe that's good enough. But, you know, writing beautiful fiction or a letter or an email to a loved one, you start to use AI to do that, and you're losing kind of the whole point, and you're sort of getting caught in the illusion a little bit. So we have to be more mindful than ever in the face of AI.
I love that invitation for us to just keep being aware of like, when are we caught in the illusion? I even love in your book, there's like a lot of prompting that you bring in of just, can you read this more slowly? And I notice like how powerful of a mindfulness practice that even is, to not let my mind get sped up and get like activated by the technology, but just to even invite the slowing down practice as we interact with technology. So there's so much more wisdom to be shared. Jay, thank you for being here and for sharing so much. Where can people learn more about you and your book, Reclaim Your Mind?
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was really fun. I really appreciate the invitation. If you just Google my name or go to jayvidyarthi.com, I've just got a website that sort of points to all the different work, and Reclaim Your Mind's available everywhere. And I also write at attentionactivist.com. So happy to receive messages from anyone who has further questions. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Centered in the City podcast. I welcome you to take a moment and pause with me here and reflect on the nuggets of wisdom that you are leaving with. What's one insight that you gained today that you're excited to either sit with a little bit more or journal with, or maybe you're inspired to create a different ritual in your life when it comes to technology? For me, I'm really inspired to slow down the moments where I grab my phone out of autopilotness when maybe I'm bored or I'm waiting for something, and ask myself in those moments, what do I need? What do I need? What am I doing out of habit and reaction? And what am I doing out of an unconscious need? And by just naming that need, maybe not even needing to fill it, but just by naming it, what other insights might unfold in my life? I would love to hear what insights are coming alive for you. So reach out to Jay and I on Instagram. Let us know your takeaways. And I welcome you to share this episode with somebody in your life that you know could benefit, somebody that is exploring maybe their relationship with technology. And if you feel inspired, please take a moment to rate and review this podcast. It is so helpful to get this podcast into other people's ears, hearts, and minds. So thank you for sharing your words, rating it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Until next time, stay centered.